It's Mrs. Garple again, and in this video we are going to combine our multi-step equations with translating sentences into equations. So what we're going to do first is we're going to read a sentence and we're going to break it apart piece by piece so that we know what math or arithmetic, what symbols need to go with the sentence. So our first one, the sum of is plus. X and 5, that's what we're going to be adding together, so I'm going to put that in parentheses, is 20. So now I can write my equation. X plus 5 equals 20, because is another way of saying equals. And now to solve this, we need to isolate x, so we undo the positive 5 by subtracting it from each side, and we're left with x equals 15. And now if we check, is the sum of 15 and 5 20? Well, 15 plus 5 is 20, therefore we have solved it correctly. Let's take a look at our second sentence. 2 times the sum, so 2 times, I'm going to use the dot for times so that we don't confuse it with the x as a variable. The sum of, so we're taking 2 times the sum, so 2 times the addition of something. What that looks like is 2 parentheses, 3 plus y. Amounts to, it's not something we're as accustomed to seeing, but that's another way of saying equals 4. Here's an example where we could divide both sides first rather than distribute the 2, because both sides are divisible by 2. And we are left with 3 plus y equals 2. Subtract 3 from both sides. So y equals -1. So when I check my answer, the sum of 3 and -1 is 2, and then I'm taking that times 2 is 4, which is what we want. Notice here I've been doing some mental checks. That's okay to do too. We don't have to write everything on paper. The difference is subtraction of 8 and x. Now something you need to keep in mind, and this works for difference and it works for quotients, like we'll see in the next sentence. Whatever is stated first in the sentence must be written first in the equation. So since 8 comes before x in the sentence, it needs to be written before x in the subtraction. So the difference of 8 and x, 8 subtract x, is the same as or equal to the product is times of 2 and x. So 2 and x are what are being multiplied together. So 8 minus x equals 2x. Then we can add x to each side, and we have 8 equals 3x. Then we need to divide both sides by 3, and we have x equals 8/3. And when we plug that in, we would get 16/3 on each side to check our answer. The quotient of z and 9. Quotient, that is division. Now I'm going to use probably the familiar division symbol to you, the bar with the 2 dots, but that's not how I'm going to write it in my equation. In the equation, I'm actually going to write it as a fraction. And just like with division, because the z comes before and, because z comes before 9 in this sentence, z is written in the numerator of this fraction. So the quotient of z and 9 amounts to, and we stated earlier, that's equals 9 plus z. So we want to first get this equation so we don't have a fraction. So we want to undo this division, multiply both sides by 9. That means on the right-hand side of this equation, we need to distribute the 9. So we have z equals 81 plus 9z. And then we want to isolate the variable to one side of the equation. So I will subtract 9z from each side of the equation. So now I have negative 8z equals 81. Divide both sides by negative 8. And 81 is not divisible by 8, nor do we have a common factor for the two of them. So our final answer, you can leave it as 81 over negative 8, or what you would most likely see in any sort of solution guide is a negative in front of the fraction and then 81/8. So what I have for you now are two sentences for you to write your own equations and solve. And when you have done that, then I will show you what equation you should have written and what answer you should have come up with. Now that you've had a chance to solve yourself, here's the equation and answer you should have gotten for A. Twice the difference, so that's going to be 2 parentheses, x and 6, so twice the difference, so 2 times x minus 6 is negative 27. 27 is not divisible by 2, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 2 on this problem. So we have 2x minus 12 equals negative 27. Isolate the term with x, so add 12 to both sides. And we now have 2x equals negative 15. Divide both sides by 2, and x equals negative 15 halves. For the second sentence, your equation would look like the sum of x and 5, so x plus 5, is the same as 3 less than. 3 less than means you're going to take 3 away from something. We're taking 3 away from 2x. And then I want to isolate the variable to one side of my equation, so I'm going to subtract x from each side of my equation. 5 equals x minus 3. Add 3 to each side. And we have 8 equals x. So hopefully when you solved these, you did get x equals negative 15 halves and 8 equals x.